The air in the room grew heavy the moment she stepped inside. The sharp sound of boots against the floor echoed as every eye turned to her. She wore her uniform with quiet pride, her back straight and her gaze steady. But that day, something was different. A small group stood waiting for her, and their words cut through the silence like a knife. Take it off. Remove the uniform. No one could believe what they had just heard. This was not just about clothing. It was about stripping away her identity, her role, the respect she had earned through years of sacrifice. She paused for a moment, her hands clenched at her sides. The room seemed to close in around her, filled with whispers and hidden glances. Everyone was expecting her to obey, to quietly surrender. But instead, she began unbuttoning the jacket slowly, her movements calm but unshaken. The people who had ordered her to remove it thought they would humiliate her, thought they would prove a point. What they didn't realize was that she carried something far greater than fabric and rank. As the last button came undone, a silence fell over the crowd. Her sleeve slid back slightly, and that's when they saw a bold tattoo etched on her arm. It wasn't just ink. It was a mark, a symbol everyone in that room knew, but wished they could forget. For a moment, no one moved. The faces that had been stern and demanding now froze in shock. Some stepped back without realizing it, their eyes wide as if the walls themselves had shifted. That tattoo was not ordinary, it carried history, fear, and a story no one dared to speak aloud. She stood tall, letting them see it, letting them feel the weight of its presence. What happened next would change everything. But in that breathless moment, with silence pressing down on all sides, the only question that mattered was this: what secret had she been carrying all along, and why did it terrify them so much? The silence lingered, stretching longer than anyone expected. That tattoo wasn't something most people spoke about openly, yet its meaning was carved deep into the minds of those who recognized it. Rumors had circled for years about a symbol connected to an old Group 1 that carried both power and fear. No one ever thought they would see it here, revealed so boldly on her arm. She didn't flinch as the whispers began. Some people exchanged quick, uneasy glances, while others looked away, as if even staring at the mark was dangerous. For her, the tattoo wasn't just decoration. It was a memory, a reminder of what she had endured and the reason she had chosen to wear the uniform in the first place. Every line of ink told a story she had never spoken aloud. Many in the room had only known her as the quiet soldier who followed rules, never raising her voice, never stepping into conflict. But the truth was far deeper. Long before she wore the uniform, she had lived through battles no one dared to imagine. The tattoo was a piece of that hidden life, a chapter she had kept locked away. Those who recognized it now realized she wasn't just another officer standing in front of them. She was someone who carried a past larger than the walls surrounding them. The ones who ordered her to remove the uniform suddenly regretted their demand. They had tried to expose her, to weaken her in front of others. Instead, they had revealed something even they weren't prepared to face. The atmosphere grew heavier, almost suffocating, as questions filled the air. Who was she before all this? Why did she bear the mark everyone feared? She remained still, calm, watching their faces change. The tattoo had spoken for her, louder than any words ever could. And yet, it left behind only more mystery. What would happen now that her secret was no longer hidden? Eyes darted from one face to another, each person silently hoping someone else would speak first. The room was thick with unease, yet beneath it lay something sharper: fear mixed with curiosity. No one dared to step closer, though everyone wanted answers. The tattoo had shifted the balance of power. And now the very people who thought they controlled the moment found themselves cornered by their own. Silence. Whispers broke out in the back of the room. Some insisted it was just a coincidence that marks like that could be copied. Others shook their heads firmly, knowing it was impossible to fake. The design was too precise, too loaded with meaning. It wasn't just a marquette, it was a declaration of belonging to a story. Bigger than all of them, one of the officers who had given the order clenched his jaw, trying to mask the nervous twitch in his hand. He remembered hearing stories late at night about people who carried that symbol. They weren't ordinary. They were survivors of a group that no one dared challenge, people who had seen things that most only whispered about. If she was truly one of them, then forcing her to stand there without her uniform might have been the biggest mistake of his career. Meanwhile, some of her peers, who had always thought of her as distant and disciplined, now looked at her with fresh eyes. They wondered what kind of battles had shaped her, what kind of scars lay hidden beyond the ink. Was the tattoo a warning, a promise, or perhaps a burden she could never escape? She met their stares calmly, saying nothing, as though she had expected this moment to come sooner or later. Yet inside the silence, a storm brewed. The conflict was no longer about a uniform, it was about trust, power, and secrets that refused to stay buried. And as the tension grew heavier, one question pressed on every mind. Had they uncovered her past, or had she allowed them to see just enough to remind them who truly held the upper hand? The silence no longer felt still, it vibrated with tension, like a wire stretched too tight. Every second dragged heavier than the last as her presence filled the room. The tattoos seemed to burn in the minds of those watching, pulling them deeper into questions they didn't dare ask aloud. It wasn't just what it meant, it was what it might bring. One officer finally stepped forward, his voice unsteady, though he tried to hide it. "Where did you get that?" he asked. The words sounded louder than they should have, echoing through the crowded space. She didn't answer. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, as if weighing whether he even deserved to know. That silence hit harder than any reply. It reminded them all that she controlled the moment, not them. Another tried to diffuse the tension, muttering that it was just a tattoo, nothing more. But no one believed him. They had all heard the same stories of an unseen network, of people marked not just by ink, but by loyalty, sacrifice, and unshakable courage. If she truly carried that history, then her presence among them was not accidental. It was intentional, and that terrified them. Some of her peers shifted nervously, wondering if they should stand with her or distance themselves. Loyalties cracked like fragile glass. The very walls seemed to lean closer, trapping them in a space where truth pressed in from all sides. They had tried to strip her down, to expose her. But instead, they had uncovered something they couldn't contain. Her eyes moved slowly across the room, meeting each gaze without blinking. It wasn't a challenge, it was a reminder. She knew something they didn't, something bigger than uniforms, ranks, or rules. And though no one dared to admit it out loud, they all felt the same chilling thought rising in their minds. Whatever came next would change everything. The moment hovered on the edge of breaking, the tension coiling tighter and tighter, until it seemed the air itself might shatter. Everyone was waiting for the first move, the spark that would set the entire room ablaze. Just when the silence felt unbearable, a sound cut through the tension, a sharp knock at the door. Every head turned, startled. No one was expected, and the timing was too precise to be coincidence. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside. Dressed in plain clothes, yet carrying an authority that made the room stiffen. His eyes swept across the group, but when they landed on her, his expression changed. It was not surprise. It was recognition. For a heartbeat, the room froze again, but this time the fear deepened. The officer who had questioned her earlier took a step back, as though the ground beneath him was shifting. The newcomer's gaze flicked down to the tattoo, and he gave the slightest nod, as if confirming what he already knew. That small gesture sent a ripple of unease through everyone else. Whispers spread like wildfire. Who was this man? And why did he seem tied to her secret? Some suspected he was part of the same hidden circle, the one marked by the feared tattoo. Others thought he had come to expose her further, to strip away the last layer of mystery. Either way, his arrival raised the stakes to a level no one had prepared for. Her posture remained unshaken. But her eyes told a different story, now calm, yet sharper, as though she had been waiting for this exact moment. The tension that had hovered before now doubled, twisting into something more dangerous. No one knew whether these two were allies or adversaries. But one thing was clear. The truth wasn't just about her anymore. It was bigger, wider, and far more threatening than anyone had guessed. The crowd held its breath, the weight of the unknown pressing harder. Whatever was about to unfold would not just change her story, it would drag everyone in that room into it. And as the newcomer took one more step forward, the question was no longer what she was hiding, but who else carried the same shadow. The newcomer's footsteps echoed as he crossed the room, the tension snapping tighter with every step. No one dared to speak. When he finally stopped in front of her, the air felt charged, as if the walls themselves were listening. He raised his hand slowly, not in threat, but in acknowledgement. "It's time."